So in this video, we are talking about the one thing that can change your life. Now, I've been trying to find some different things that I've found in my life that have really worked, and I've really helped me excel in the different areas of my life. And this one thing I believe can really dramatically change your life. There is, many different scenarios in which you can apply this that can actually help you improve, again, whatever area in life that you want. And what I'm actually talking about today is your dependencies. What dependencies do you have that are really holding you back? Because one thing you can always look at, especially you can easily find in a relationship, you'll find that you will tend to lose yourself and gravitate towards those things that the other person is essentially more interested in. You find if you have a new relationship that it pulls you away essentially from your purpose. And I explain why a lot of times on this channel, why your purpose is so meaningful, because if you lose your sense of self, you become extremely dependent on the other person. And it could be anything else. Maybe you're single. You may actually find that there are other different avenues in your life that you're extremely dependent on that essentially gives you that dopamine hit. Maybe you got an eating disorder, right? Maybe you find that you always tend to go to food because that is your dopamine hit. That is what you're dependent upon to help ease pain. That's essentially what we're trying to do, is fill a void with these dependencies. And it's hard initially because a lot of times you don't see things as you being dependent upon that. And you have to almost do a self-audit. And you feel that one thing you can really depict these things that are dependencies is if that dependency, if you take it away, how do you act? Do you become angry? Do you become emotional? Right? These particular things are like red flags. That's a major dependency. So these major dependencies can really pull you away from your purpose. And your purpose is something essentially that you lose track of. Something that you feel like you can be doing and hours pass. These are the particular things that you want in your life. These are things that you want to pull into your life that you feel like your day is just passing with ease and you're enjoying the time. It could be even something you're doing for your business or for work, or something for yourself. It has to be something for yourself that you lose track of time. And you realize that by having that purpose, you're a more happier, fulfilled person by having that purpose, no matter what it is. And typically I always talk about relationships, because relationships tend to build that dependency. And a lot of times you may have voids in your life that you don't want to essentially trying to address. And so you look for a relationship for those voids, when in fact you should be aware of them. As long as you are aware of them and you're doing that self-audit and correcting yourself, like, hey, okay, well, I find like I'm really allowing this relationship to take over what my purpose is. And that's what you don't want to do, because then you find that dependency that you start becoming, if it's a relationship. And it's easy to relate a lot of stuff to a relationship, because you find that if you don't have that, you start becoming nitpicky in that relationship and all different kinds of other issues, because of the fact that you are not focused on your purpose. And those other voids, you need to figure out other ways to fill those voids, whatever those voids may be. And that takes time. It takes you to actually sit down and think about these things, right? Like critically think about these things. And I think that is a big important thing, especially when you're doing these self-audits, is to just think about what you have in your life now. Think about those dependencies and how you can remove them. But to be able to do that, you need to sit down quietly. Now, this is hard, especially because a lot of times we are impatient and we want answers. But I guarantee you, if you sit down in a quiet space and you have, give an hour for yourself, remove all electronics and just sit there with your thoughts. And before actually going into this, you should actually think about those particular issues, right? Think about your dependencies, think about your life, think about essentially your routine, think about different things, and go into this hour looking at these things. And then figure out like, okay, I've been triggered today because, my ex-girlfriend, she told me, or my girlfriend at the time, or wife, or whatever, or boyfriend, whatever the case is, they're doing this particular thing that perhaps they don't wipe off the counter or something like that. Look at that thing, that's a dependent thing, right? You're relying on that person for something else. You're nitpicking on that particular thing, and realize that that's what's triggering you. That is too much of a dependence you have on that thing, where you need to try to remove that. And you realize when you shift the focus on being on a dependent thing onto yourself and what you can do to correct it, and not focus on those little things, right? If you say, okay, well, I'm just not gonna focus on the counter, that's not gonna help. You have to focus on other things, how you're improving yourself. Because if you can shift that focus off that thing you're dependent upon, you realize that other things will start falling into place. The longer you keep that focus on your purpose, everything else will essentially shift into place. And then those little things that you found perhaps you were nitpicky about, or you found that that thing was essentially your dopamine hit, right? Maybe again you have this dependency on food as your comfort zone, right? So you have to realize that by not focusing on that thing that, oh, I can't eat that, so I'm going to do whatever it takes, and my mind just going to be trapped on that. And that's the hardest thing to escape when you have that dependency, is that you're constantly thinking about what you don't have, as opposed to, okay, well, I'm going to fill that void with something that's good, that's positive, and perhaps that's helped, pushing me to my purpose, that's causing me to lose track of time. And then eventually, it's getting in that conscious state, right? Because that conscious state is where a lot of things are, very hard to get through. It's very hard to make a routine, because before anything can go into that autopilot where you feel comfortable in doing it and everything, you're gonna be in that conscious state, and there's always gonna be friction there. And as soon as you can, get through that friction and realize that you don't need these outside things for that dopamine hit, is essentially what it breaks down to, that you're relying on, or that void, that it will slowly pull you away, and you'll have a purpose, and you'll feel much better about everything. And you realize that all these things that you were dependent upon are essentially just, essentially the toppings to what you have, right? It's the icing on the cake. It's the cherry on top. That's what all these other things are that are in your life, or extra beneficial things, bonuses essentially to your life. So you don't have dependence, you're not relying on that. And so another big point I want to touch on here is expectations. And I used to be a person that fell into having these high expectations for people, and realizing that a lot of different people, they don't live up to those expectations. And this can be extremely hard, because we don't have control over that person, or the only thing essentially that we have control over is ourselves. And so when you realize that by setting these high expectations, especially if you're not communicating that, it can be extremely hard. People can't read your mind. And so when you're looking at these dependencies and stuff, you can't have high expectations. Again, it is all coming back to the fact that these dependencies that you essentially have, they shouldn't be dependencies, but they should be bonuses to your life, because you are seeking your purpose. And so you shouldn't have high expectations for these things, because your ultimate expectations are placed on yourself, realizing that, hey, I'm going after my purpose, I'm doing what I need to do, and these other things, they complement my life, and that's what they do. I don't rely on them, they don't fill any voids, because I have a purpose, and I am out seeking those things that I want in life to make me happy. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to, is knowing that what makes you happy, and introducing that into your life, and not allowing these other things essentially to navigate you in a direction that you don't want to be going. And that's the biggest thing we're trying to avoid with these dependencies. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button on the way out. Till next time, I will see you guys later.